a lot of the advice that I certainly hear is that early access is supposed to be used as that type of testing ground. And you see this all the time with indie games where they had interesting ideas, features get cut, different features that nobody wanted gets added in, and the game just slowly changes away from what it was. And that happens because you're no longer building the game that you thought you were trying to build. Now you're building that game while also taking in customer feedback. That relationship with the audience changes what's naturally going to be developed.
This week, James, I wanted to sit down and talk with you about early access because over the last couple weeks, I've had the chance to play 2 early access games that I was really excited to get into. And one of them, I think, is one of the best early access experiences I've ever had in a video game. And the other one was not so good. And this is in no way an episode where it's trying to talk bad or talk down about certain things that a developer has done. This is all because, me and you, James, we're building a game together. And I want to understand what it is that I like or not like, or what is good or not good for us to do for our game. And having these 2 different early access experiences, I think it's a great learning lesson, at least for me, to have a better idea of when's our game or if our game is even going to enter early access. So hello, James. It's good to have you.
Hello. It's good to be here.
So for those that don't know, this is Indie Innovators. This is a podcast all about video game development where James Smith is one of the co-hosts. I'm Spencer. I am another one of the co-hosts. And James, you've been a veteran in the industry for a while now. You've been working all over the place, all sorts of things.
It's weird hearing that. Just now, just realizing all the networking I've been doing lately, and then people being like, "Oh, you've been around a while," and I'm like, nah, I'm still just new. And then being like, wait a minute. Yeah, no, I've worked. Yep. Okay. Getting there. I'm getting old.
Plus, a lot of, whether you actually know your stuff or not, people talk highly about you, James. So at least people believe you know what you're talking about.
Well, I hope I know what I'm talking about.
I would love to start with the early access title that I think is done incredibly well. One of the best early access games I've ever jumped into play, which is Grounded 2. And I got a chance to jump into it because you sent me a key for it. So thank you very much for that, James. And
you're welcome. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It forced me to, well, it didn't force me, but I took that as a sign that it's time to go through and finish Grounded, which I got through 90% of it. And then I jumped into Grounded 2, and I don't remember the last time I played an early access game that felt like it was just the full release.
So in the industry, right, you have your prototype phase and then you go into a vertical slice, which is typically a demo or just a showcase of here's all of our features, here's how it's supposed to work in an ideal level. Right. Next phase is your alpha, which is still a little early for early access, but your alpha is all of the mechanics are in. All the stuff that we want to build feature-wise are in the game. They're just not great, right? Maybe they're not fully fleshed out or have all the content added. Next is beta, which is all features are done, and then most of the content is in. It's just missing content, ideally. After that, you move forward to gold release, which is everything is done. So early access is kind of like a weird state where you're kind of shipping, but in between the alpha phase and the beta phase. So it's all the features are supposed to be in and finished, but they're also, it's content, but neither one of those categories is actually fully fleshed out. It's just kind of an in-between phase.
When I first launched Grounded 2, it felt like a completed game, minus some spots where it's you can't go through here yet. This will be some future content. But I expected launching Grounded 2, it was going to be just Grounded 1 with a couple other a couple different creatures. It was going to be a new area, maybe a couple new mechanics to interact with. But really what we got instead was the core experience of Grounded, the first one, but everything was, I don't know if streamlined is the right word for it, but everything felt more fluid. It's all of the things that felt kind of awkward and clunky about the first one were now removed, and now everything was just easier to play. And so we still had the full grounded experience, but now like the tools, they change. Like in grounded 1, you had your hot bar where you had to just throw all of your individual tools into it and then manage, what was I going to be wanting to have and interact with, versus grounded 2, where it's like, we know you want to go around and harvest all these resources. So now all of your basic tools, you just hold one button and we'll auto switch for it. We'll just make things a little bit easier for you. I think the crafting menus were a little bit nicer to go through as well. Like the exploration was still pretty much the same, but things felt just nicer and easier to run through. They know that, it's a huge map. Traveling was sometimes a little bit uncomfortable. It's like, here's some mounts. It was an improved and streamlined version of the previous game. And at least that was my experience for it. I also only played a few hours of it so far. You've played it a lot more. So I'm not sure if you have any different varying opinions on that or not.
No, I think it's an accurate, assessment of where it is for sure. And, you brought up a good point that this is a case where a studio has already released a title, got a ton of feedback, right? Not all positive either. There was a lot of negative pushback for some of this stuff that was in Grounded, the first one. But for an early access release, this is ideally, what you would want to aim for as a studio is taking feedback that of the genre or the mechanics you're using. And you don't need somebody to play your demo to give you that feedback. You can just look at the market, other games that have similar mechanics as to what you want to make, and see what the reception was. Play the game, try it out, and be like, oh, okay, yeah, I totally understand why like all the players hate that Starfield didn't come with a sorting function in the menus. It just seemed very, very such a basic component for that kind of inventory system, right? So not that I'm picking on those developers or the team, I'm just saying that like it's not hard to compare your own circumstances, like your in terms of design, to what's already been out there and seeing what's been done well and where can you improve it. Now, Grounded 2 specifically, yeah, they were able to take all that feedback from their first one and be like, okay, what can we build on, and then what should be changed to make it better? The quality of life, right? Like having multiple tools, just it's inside the Omni tool. Like you don't have to like deal with that hubbub of managing tool durability and having multiple tools. And they still kept all the upgrading and using materials and everything else, which is what the system, their like crafting, upgrading system was based on, which was good. Not sure to take it from there, but yeah, no, like that in essence is what early access is supposed to be, is here's most of the completed game, which they did. There's like feature wise, here's all the game. A lot of, and now they're not feature complete, of course, that's not what I'm saying. As they are releasing new content, it is all additional kinds of content. For example, the forget the name of the tarantula that's coming out in their most recent content patch. It introduces different mechanics. It introduces the concept of like a super boss fight, like something where they've taken account an existing mechanic that they've added to the game, mounting, right? Mounts, and having that be a heavy, like a more involved component in that battle. So like that's a good way to use early access. I think where a lot of indies don't get early access right is they think of it more as an opportunity to almost get not free testing, but like get paid to let people test your game. And while that is a result of that situation, releasing to early access, that's not why you want to do it, right? Like the reason to do that is to build a player base, it's to get them involved, it's to get the feedback. But a lot of times that's not how it's presented. It's more presented as like, hey, we're launching early because we need money or some other reason, or we're just launching early because we're small and we want to like build up a fan base. But like there's really no indication as to what the state of the game is. Often indies are not the best at handling scope. So what you'll see in a lot of early access games, as I'm sure you've seen many times yourself, is mechanics and systems just aren't working, or they feel like they've never been tested before, or something that was in that maybe wasn't great is then removed in the next patch, and then it's added back in the next patch, and it's just kind of like it doesn't feel like you're accessing something early, which should be almost like a VIP experience. It should be like, hey, I enjoyed my time here. This is a sneak peek. Like, this is special. And that's what the mark is. I think Grounded 2 was very good at being like, hey, here's this special experience. Hop in now. Just just so you know, like under construction, don't mind the tape, right? And yeah, no, a lot of indies, even some of the ones I've worked with, just don't have that mentality. They don't understand that that's really where your mindset should be. Here's a VIP sneak peek sneak.
I wonder if that comes from when early access was first introduced, because early access, I mean, the idea of it for the most part hasn't been around really that long. Arguably, I'd say closer to 15 to 10 years for when it actually started to really take off as being something a little bit more common. And when early access first came in, it was this brand new thing where it was just kind of like throwing out a game and just people giving feedback. And I wonder if because of all of us that grew up experiencing early access that way, that's kind of the mentality that a lot of indie developers would still have. Because we did an episode before on early access where we talked about Raft and how when Raft came into early access, the core experience of Raft was already there. It was the survival game loop. And then as it continued through early access, new islands showed up that just progressed some of the story and added some extra things there. But the core game loop was already there. But like before the time of Raft, early access was more of a, at least from what I remember, it was more of a let's just put something out. Then people can interact with it and provide feedback, and then from there it can grow and we can like shape it into something. But there's now so many different games and so much content out there that there's just so much already done out there that we can see and learn from, and feedback people are giving on other games that like we don't. The idea of I'm going to make 10% of the game, put it into early access, and then people will help me build the rest of it. That's not really it. Like it's not needed anymore unless somehow someone comes up with some brand new genre or some genre defining thing like we used to have with different early access games.
In the industry, early access basically serves two purposes, right? Like just generally speaking. One is for the early testing, pushing your servers, pushing your features, doing all of your quality checks, getting early reviews, getting early wish lists. It's part of your campaign now, basically. And then on the flip side, it's more of that, right? It's more of the marketing, it's more of the demo, it's more of trying to get a piece of the pie so that you can build up your numbers so that when you do go to launch, you launch with like a bunch of positive reviews and you launch with a bunch of positive press and you launch with ideally a fully fleshed out game, and you reset your store, numbers on Steam, and like, oh, we're finally 1.0, and then you get a big boost. And so like, I think a lot of the advice that I certainly hear among indies and people trying to like share knowledge and whatnot is that early access is supposed to be used as that type of testing ground, right? But like I said, that's not really what early access should be for you as a developer, because all you're going to run into is a bunch of feedback that you may or may not agree with about a product that is not representative of what the product was intended to be. And you see this all the time with indie games where they had interesting ideas, features get cut, different features that nobody wanted gets added in, and the game just slowly changes away from what it was. And that happens because you're no longer building the game that you thought you did or that you were trying to build. Now you're building that game while also taking in customer feedback. That relationship with the audience changes what's naturally going to be developed, right? In a normal game, right? In a normal typical release, you get a bit of a demo where it's just like, hey, this is what you get. And then you just like bounce off feedback a bit. And then after release, you release content updates and patches, right? It's the same cycle, except now you're doing content updates and patches based on player feedback before you even launch the game. And so if you are not a very disciplined or don't really have a solid vision for what you're making, doing early access can be more detrimental, because then you'll just start building stuff based off of what the community is saying. And then you see that all the time with all kinds of games in early access where they'll complain that like this was not the way it was and they had these features and it was better then. I don't know why they removed it. They probably removed it because in the data, whether that's polls in their servers or just reaching out to people on Steam or getting tons of hate comments on Twitter, like who knows where the feedback is coming from. But there's an overwhelming amount of feedback for the dev to make the change that you're unhappy with, or maybe you're really happy with and somebody else is unhappy with. My where I'm getting at here is that like this is in essence basically scope creep, right? Your game becomes something more, and if you don't have the experience that way Obsidian does with Grounded One of being able to release, update, maintain direction, and just like really develop their own product, we're just getting to see it the first time. It's a totally different perspective, totally different mentality. Studios with experience can do that. Teams with experience can do that. Small indies, like it's a big risk. And I don't think enough truly understand or appreciate what kind of risk that is.
I know that the game that I'm about to bring up, again, this is not intended to like crap on the developers or say it's a terrible game. That's not the intention. All this is all just intended as like a learning kind of experience so that I can ask you questions about decisions that that might have been made. But so the other game I got the chance to play in early access recently was a game called Fair Trade. Fair Trade is developed by SassyBot, who created one of my absolute favorite, just addicted shopkeeping games, Winkleja, the Little Shop. It's the kind of game I would sit down to play for an hour, and suddenly, 6 hours have gone by and I'm still sitting there going like, not enough time. And so I want to really stress that I love the stuff that they do. And so when SassyBot launched Fair Trade, which essentially it looks like the exact same thing as Winkleja, just kind of a little bit added on. But really what we got was an earlier version of what Winkleja actually was. I would say it had 80% of the features of what were the core experience of Winkleja, but then it just had extra things tacked onto it. So there's certain things like you could build little farms to grow your food, but now the farms are outside of your shop down the road where you have to load into another area. And then instead of being able to spend your points to upgrade stuff, now you have to go and leave your place to go to another town or to go to the town so you can talk to a lady. But then there's all these other buildings that you can see and you can walk up to, but they don't actually mean anything. So like it feels like they wanted to do more and make something special with it, like, and to make it feel like more of this living world. But all it really was here's some of the things you used to be able to do, and instead of it just being a menu, now you have to go and walk and take time away from playing the game to just go and interact with the menu in a different area. All in all, it felt like a downgrade, and it didn't add anything to the game that we couldn't already do, except for like, here's like a couple extra types of produce, and now you can just buy a bunch of stuff and there's no specializations for your shops. And so it was a weird experience for me. I don't know if it was just because I was so dead set on coming in and loving the previous one, but originally I got the keys so that I could go and create a review for the game. And I had to email them back and just say, I love the game. I want to see where this goes. Really excited for it. But I don't think this game's ready. Like I can't do a review if the game's not ready. And then a couple days later, I got an email back, and it was like the publisher passing the message on from. So I don't know if they changed the wording or not, but it was just, thanks for letting us know. Yeah, that's the developer said, yeah, that's why it's in early access, is because it's not ready yet. And that's when I started to really wonder, like, okay, well, what does early access actually mean?
Like early access from an industry point of view, right, is that you are getting that playtime. You're getting early sales, you're generating a little bit of revenue. It's meant to be indie friendly so that you can work through those issues and build a better game. The problem is the market doesn't behave the way you want it to, right? Because the perception of the person buying the early access game is bought this game. Inevitably, whether or not most people are like this or not, but the loudest ones are typically either like fanatic level fans, or they're people who are just like, this has a shade of red that I don't like. This, it's a POS. Like, don't buy this. Like, hate, right? Like, those are the two very big extremes. But in between all of that noise, what it boils down to is somebody spent their hard-earned money which is getting harder and, more value. It has more value to us individually now because we can't spend it like we used to. So that person feels entitled to your project. Whether it's in early access and you are using it as a tool to make it better does not matter. Somebody paid for it. And if they're paying for it and it doesn't feel good, they're not going to want it. They're not going to be happy about it. They're not going to want to keep it. They're not going to want to share it with their friends. They're not going to hype it up. They're going to do the opposite. They're going to be like, like you said, it's not ready. So to have the standpoint of, well, this is why it's here, like that's just, forgive me, it's a little bit ignorant in a business sense for a studio of any kind, even a publisher, to say, well, we're here to fix that. That's why we're doing early access. Because what you're doing is you're really negating the pain point of your consumer market, which is, this isn't fun. This isn't great. This is taking me out of it, which is what they're right. Like, that's why you're doing early access, is to get that information. But understanding that if that's the frustrations, then yeah, the game's not ready. You shouldn't be in early access. Early access should be, like I said, it's the VIP treatment. It's the red carpet. It's like, you are the first wave of people to come in and tell us what you think of the game, but the game should be ready. That's not the phase to start doing like alpha testing. And that's what I'm trying to get at here, is that like a lot of indies and even younger publishing companies, they have the perception that that's what early access is for, because that's what they're told it's for. But they're not told like what are the ramifications of it, because it's not just about developing games. It's about running a studio. It's about being a business. It's about serving customers. It's all of that is also part of game development. Whether you agree or not, that's just facts. That's the way it is. So yeah, I personally, I just think it's very dismissive, and you're harming yourself as a team or as an individual, as an indie developer, if you take that stance. That's not what early access was for. Early access is for you're showing off the best of what you got with minor tweaks needed. It should be fun. It should feel like, you know what? I got a great deal. I got a great deal. I spent money. I got in on this early access. It's going to go up in price when it releases. I'm so savvy, but I'm also savvy because I bought something that I had faith in. They're responding to my input, and this feels good to spend my time here. I want to play this game. That's why you want indie early access, because those people are the ones who do go out there and bug their friends and are like, hey, I bought a key for you. Hey, this is a game for you to play. Hey, come play this with me. Or they go online and say, yeah, this was amazing. Here's my experience. Here's my screenshots. Check out this awesome thing I recorded. Small YouTube channels fled to it because they're just like, man, this is just fun. And I'm not big enough to care about my numbers. I just want to show it and play it. That's what you're aiming for. And that is a different, right? That's different than I'm using my audience to test whether or not this game is fun. Like, they're fundamentally different.
And then I know, like, some people might bring this up too, and I very much know, like, it's two very different studios and like the sizes that they are and the kind of games that they make, and like, so the whole discussion here has nothing to do with the studios itself, but it's just the comparison of what they've done differently. The big takeaway I got from playing these two games, and correct me if you feel differently with it, but when we go to work on our game together, if we decide to go an early access route with it, by the time we put that game out into early access, it should be at a stage where we can send this to people to get legitimate reviews. Like, we could send this out to like IGN or whoever to be like, hey, can you review our game? If I'm putting my game into early access, but giving a key to a reviewer and I have to say, hey, it's early access, these main mechanics aren't in there yet because we're not at this stage yet, then it's not early access. It shouldn't be early access unless it's like, again, some crazy thing nobody's ever seen before where nobody actually knows if it's going to be good or even work. So,
well, this is an interesting topic too, because you said, like, very different studios, very different teams, very different experiences. Like, yes, there's always going to be niche edge cases, and it's never going to be a single formula that everybody could just copy and get it done. Because if they did, every game would be successful. But obviously that's not how it works. And really, when I think about the game Fair Trade and some of the decisions they made, it just doesn't feel. And here's the harsh truth: it doesn't feel like it's well made. It wasn't well designed, especially when you're coming from. I always mess up the name. Can you pronounce it?
Winkleja, the little shop.
Winklejet. Winklejet, yeah, right. The little shop. Like, yeah, it's a great game. It was well designed. Everything that they aimed for was kept under. It seems like it was kept under a pretty narrow scope. Like they kept on point. They did what worked well, and they focused on it, and they got that out the door. And it was a good game. With fair trade, especially the walking to a different area, like you brought up, like I hate when games do that because what did it add to the experience other than the hypothetical, I want to explore the world more? Or it's meant to be like a tool to introduce other content and mechanics later, right? If that's like, it doesn't serve any parts of the design at all. It really doesn't. Like it was a menu before and it worked amazing. So anything that you add to it, your bar in terms of like design is that it should still be amazing because everything you add should not be a negative net positive, right? Like it should not bring it down. Sorry. And that's just not for me anyways. That's not what I got from Fairtrade, but that's definitely what I've gotten from Grounded too. Like everything that they've done, bugs and other issues, aside, has not felt like a downgrade. They kept a very specific quality line, and that's where things stayed. They didn't dip down, and that's important. I think, yeah, with fair trade, it felt like a dip down. It felt like a trade off. It felt like while they probably had bigger ambitions, they weren't really coordinated into the design in a way that would really shine, right? And it's ironic. I recently gave a workshop about modular design, like how do you design for systems and how they plug into each other. And that's like the core tenet is that like if this system doesn't interact with one or two other things in a meaningful way in like 3 steps, which is like player interaction, what happens, the consequence, and the output, which I put fish in this furnace and then out comes cooked fish. Like if there's no actual thing happening with a feature I've added or a system I've added, I shouldn't add that system because it's not fun, right? Or the other answer is if I'm dead set on adding this, I got to make sure that it does integrate like that. It has to communicate with the rest of the game design. Otherwise, it's not going to feel like a whole. It's going to feel like things have been tacked on. And like that's just like I won't say basic design, but yeah, like that's designing vertically, right? That's like how do we make this as best as it can be? Not, oh, we have like a little bit of gameplay and like let's add on more and let's add on more and let's add on more and let's add on more. Like it's still shallow. That's still like a shallow level of gameplay. And in my opinion, and this is like I'm getting slightly off topic, but like the vertical design, making sure things are modular is how you get the best emergent gameplay. That's when people have the most fun because it turns a game more into a sandbox. It's like I don't have to do everything exactly the way it's showing me to do it. I can experiment. I can find my own way of doing it better, of doing it differently. And not in terms of a meta, but in terms of how my play style, right? Games that design horizontally, which is adding more features and more content for the sake of expanding on gameplay, is very shallow. Once you've experienced it, there's not much more to do. Like once you realize you have to walk down to the town, that's just what you have to do. And it's just an add-on to something you have to do, which makes it a task, which if you're not there to play a task simulator, like it doesn't feel good, right? Because and even then, that still wouldn't feel good. Like if you just created like basic stuff like walk to the edge of the courtyard in Power Wash Simulator, like that wouldn't feel good, right? It doesn't fit. So, anyways, I just thought it was interesting as like the timing of it. And yeah, like that's what that overlap is with early access. Early access should not be about testing weak design. The early access should be about how do we take this strong design and make it better.
Might cut this part in a little earlier as well to mention too. It's like just so everybody was like, I'm still gonna be following Fair Trade the whole way through because they made Winkleja and it was an incredible game. And
Yeah.
we're not sponsored here, but please go buy that game. But it was so good that I'm sure down the road Fair Trade's gonna be incredible. I'm really excited for it down the road, but yeah, like right now it's just
Yeah.
it was
And
it was a
no
nice little
shade.
like thing to be like, okay, now I've seen what a game can look like if it goes into early access, but it's not ready for early access, and so now I want to make sure that when we launch our game, we're not following the same mistakes. And again, it's not to like talk crap or to speak poorly about them, but it's more of just trying to use stuff to make myself, or to learn things that I see out in the games industry to make myself better at
Yeah.
making games.
No, exactly. And that is the biggest point here is there's no shame or shade or hate or whatever, judgment even. There's none of that. It's just it's hard. Like game design is hard, and you may be able to do it great the first time. It doesn't mean every single time after is going to be great, especially when the scope of things change. Like if that team had never ever tried to do any kind of like traversal based, I don't know what you would call that, but like a feature that allowed you to navigate the world because they want you to be more involved in the world around free trade, not just like the shop itself. Like that's not a bad goal to aim for. In fact, that's quite a lofty goal to add to the original formula. But again, that does not mean that early access is a good fit for the tinkering part of that. Like like that should be way more closed alpha. Like you should bring people in to like do that testing early with your feedback that you're giving, saying, hey, it's not quite there. And then being like, okay, like this is what we're hearing, this is what we could tweak. It's better business wise to do that not publicly, because if it's bad, then you're not going to have a bunch of people out there being like, oh, it's not bad. Like public facing commentary is like, oh, there's bugs and I fell through the floor, and it's all like basic generic stuff that gamers and people in the industry are just used to. You're not going to get you'll get a lot of like negativity, but it's all super minor. It's nothing game breaking. It's not going to be anything that makes anybody not want to buy the game. And yeah, like so yeah, anyways, no shade. It's hard. It's always hard. And it is always going to be easier to be on the outside looking in and be like, oh, that's where that went wrong. But like you said, it's what's important here is to look at what went wrong and be like, okay, what are some of the reasons that may have happened? And yeah, how can we not do that? How can we better design and keep that in mind when we want to think about things like early access? There's also a whole other side of this too, is was it even their decision?
I guess that's also a great part to jump in here, and I'm definitely going to cut this into the beginning. Is like all of our opinions and things we're talking about in this episode is all in our own biased opinion. Like this is all stuff where we don't know the reasons or decisions behind why things were made, and nor are we trying to say that they did something wrong or right. It's just our own biased opinion on what we believe as game developers.
Yeah, well, like our goal here is to try and point out a more successful path, different ways of thinking about things. Like there's no one fit all solution, but it is important to look and try and figure out, okay, how did that work? Why did they do that? What if I'm in the same situation? And it's not I'm a better dev, it's just truly understanding what were the circumstances. As I mentioned, there's not even anything to say that the team behind Fair Trade even wanted to do early access at this stage. Maybe it was purely a funding issue. Maybe it was a publisher related issue. That happens a lot. There's a lot of publishers out there who request that you go to early access to prove viability before they give you more money to do that feature development, to do that content. Yeah, like your funding should never hinge off of certain kinds of milestones like that. Right? Like they shouldn't, because if your next milestone is to get there, but you don't have the proper funding or plan laid out in advance to be in a early access state to make it beneficial for yourself, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. And unfortunately, contracts are not necessarily that easy to modify or to renegotiate terms. So there's a lot of teams I know who have had to go early access simply because they had no choice. It's just now is time. Development took too long. We weren't able to get the amount of testing that we maybe needed, whatever the reason. And there's many. So yeah, like everything being said, maybe it wasn't even their choice. Maybe they know deep down it's not early access ready, or it's not as ready as they would love it to be, but it is what it is. And that happens a lot too.